Welcome to Tech Talk Live. This is episode 82. We're going to talk today about upgrading Alfresco to the new 5.0 release. Before we introduce our panelists, I wanted to make a couple quick announcements. So first thing is, during December, we were able to release the Alfresco SDK 2.0. So we were calling it the Maven SDK, but it's not. It's got all the Maven goodness, but it's generally the way to start developing for Alfresco. So it's available. Thank you, Ol and Gab and Maurizio and everybody who spent their December holidays working on that. Hopefully it's going to be really useful. So check that out. January 16th, a week from Friday, we're having our next office hours. That's going to be with the engineering team. Brian Remington, the head of engineering, his vice president of engineering, is offered to participate in that and answer your questions about how our engineering team works, and specifically we want to talk about how we can collaborate better, how Alfresco can collaborate with you as our developer and open source communities, and how we can communicate better. So look out for that. Send us your questions, all that sort of thing. February 4th is the next Tech Talk Live. We're going to talk about iCal. It's another one in our series of advanced iCal. The iCal team is going to talk about testing. So iCal is the new share tool set for doing UIs on top of share in Alfresco. It's also time for us to start thinking about our next global virtual hackathon. Last year we had it in May, so we still need to pick a date. I'm thinking April this year because there were a lot of holidays in May. I guess there's a lot of holidays in April, so we'll have to figure that out, but keep that on your radar. Start thinking of projects. And the next meetup I'm aware of is the Moscow meetup in May, so check the community calendar at alfresco.com/community to get details on those events. So that's the rundown of announcements. As always, you can participate in this conversation on upgrading Alfresco in all of our Tech Talk Live conversations by going to chat.alfresco.com during the live event, and we keep monitoring that IRC channel and have conversations there. So let us talk to our panelists. So I'm really grateful for everybody to join today. Today we've got with us one of our certified partners, Tony Parzgnat from TSG. So would you like to introduce yourself, Tony?
Sure. Nice job on the last name, Richard. Almost there. Tony Parzgnat. I'm a project manager and technical architect at Technology Services Group. We're one of Alfresco's original partners located in Chicago. I'm a certified administrator. I've been doing Alfresco work for a number of years now. I'm excited to finally be on this panel.
I also invited Tony. He's a very polished Lightning Talk presenter at Summit. You can see his videos, and he's done, I don't even know how many add-ons you've done, Tony. You've done a bunch of add-ons, and he's tested them. He's maintained his add-ons through multiple versions of Alfresco, so he provides a very valuable perspective there for this conversation. And then we have one of our top community contributors, Angel Borroy, with Keensoft. Would you like to introduce yourself, Angel?
Hello, I'm Angel Borroy from Keensoft, Spain, and we are working mainly with community version. We have 2 or 3 experience with Alfresco 5. It's a very, very nice release, so we are very happy with your work.
Thank you. And it's very nice that we invited Angel specifically because he wrote a great blog post on upgrading, and he answered a lot of questions. He does a great job participating in the Spanish forums and writing on his Spanish blog as well. So if that's your native language, that's a great place to get more information. So we also have 2 Alfresco employees participating. Philip Jones is one of our senior system administrators. He's the one who upgraded our internal Alfresco systems to 5.0. How'd that process go, Philip?
Very well. We did a lot of work around it beforehand on test systems, and yeah, the production system, the upgrade went pretty smoothly. We were very pleased.
For Philip's role in upgrading is always an adventure because he's the first person to do it with Enterprise Edition anyway. He does it before the release, and so he works very closely with engineering to solve the problems that he finds.
Yeah, hopefully we can help minimise the nasty things that you might otherwise see. Yeah, it's going well.
Excellent. And of course, we have Steve Rigby. Steve is on our cloud DevOps team, and he's the one that upgraded our cloud to the latest code base. So, would you like to introduce yourself, Steve?
Yeah, I'm Steve. I run the DevOps team, so it's all our cloud services. I'm also a founding employee of the company, so almost 10 years now.
I didn't realize you were one of the original group in John's garage.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. Excellent. So that's a little bit of background. I thought we'd start off by talking about your favorite feature in 5.0. Why should we upgrade? And personally, my favorite feature is the search stuff. So I'm going to steal that one. I know it's a lot of people's favorite feature, but I really like the fastest search. It makes finding stuff in our internal Alfresco instances so much easier. What are your guys' big motivations for upgrading?
Who's going to go first?
Why don't you go ahead, Philip?
Oh, okay then. As you've stolen search, I will have to go with the document previews. I love them. The HTML5 document previews, awesome. So slick and much faster, and this just the way that you can. It's you go and edit or look at a PDF document, for example, and you can have little thumbnail previews of each page, just like if you were opening it in Acrobat, and it's just so much nicer and better.
Excellent. What's your favorite, Steve?
That's a good question. I've been lucky enough that with part of the Alfresco 5 development processes, the features have been incrementally added to cloud. So I've seen them incrementally rather than the big bang differences between 4 and 5. So the previews I've been using for months, and anybody who uses their cloud service as well. But I think one of the biggest changes is the Alfresco Office services, the SharePoint replacement, and the depth of features that actually gives is far greater than the old SharePoint integration.
Excellent. Thanks for that perspective. Why don't you go next, Tony?
Since you totally stole everybody's thunder with search, I have to dig a little bit deeper. I would say the search improvements are huge. Specifically, it seems minor, but the ability to act on documents from your search results, to do actions from your search results rather than having to click into the documents from your search results, I think is a huge time saver. In addition to that, the suggestions in simple search as you're typing, it's suggesting things for you, I think is great.
Excellent. So, Angel, we already took all the easy ones. What's your favorite feature?
As I said, from a user point of view, that the document preview is the favorite new feature. It includes the quick search download button on the screen of the quick search, and you can download original document or PDF document. So this is very important for many users. But from a developer point of view, I should say the Maven. Maven is a huge step ahead in Fresco development.
Excellent, thank you. And that's another plug for the new SDK that incorporates and shows demonstrations of all those changes. If you're getting started on Alfresco, going to that new SDK at the you can download it in the wiki or on GitHub or in artifacts.alfresco.com. It gives you a lot of guidance for how to develop on Alfresco 5.0. So I think that's a great improvement. The Maven plus the examples in the SDK together make a lot of things easier. Well, thanks for that. So for this conversation, we didn't really talk about who was going to share what items, so feel free to jump in. But the first item I think we should discuss is the standard upgrade. So if you're upgrading Alfresco, the first place you should go is to the official documentation at docs.alfresco.com. and those have improved a lot over the last few releases. And there's an entire chapter on upgrading that goes through the standard process. And basically you back up what you've got, you install and test a clean system with your data, and then you restore into that working system your previous data. So the key things, of course, are the content in your data store, and your relational database backend, and making sure you're hooked into your user authentication, and then of course your indexes. Though for 5.0, indexes might be a little bit. We're going to talk about indexes in 5.0 in a moment. But so for the panel, what are the most important things to remember during a standard upgrade? What are the steps? As a high-level overview.
Shall I take this one first? I would say, obviously, very important to start with is a good backup, both the database and preferably having a snapshot of some kind for your content store. You should read through the installation and make sure that you're comfortable with all the different steps before you actually try and action it, because there are a number of subtle changes in Enterprise, especially. So the Alfresco war file is significantly different. There is no Alfresco application to access anymore. You're just going to have share, and there's a number of small changes and things, but the biggest changes are going to be largely around the Solr for implementation and things. So there's some decisions about how you might want to implement that and things, potentially alongside Solr 1 and things. So those are the most important things to sort of consider, I would say, when you're looking at installing and upgrading. Can go into more detail, as Richard said, in a bit.
I would add on to that the need, before you start doing anything, evaluate any of your custom configurations or even customizations if you have a customized version of Alfresco. Obviously, there's a whole wide variety of ways to customize. I think following best practices for customization will make your upgrades a lot easier, but I think it's a good thing to do before you start anything. Take an inventory of what your customizations are and start thinking about what it's going to take to port those over to the new version. Hopefully all of your customizations are neatly packaged into AMP files that you can recompile and deploy on the new version, but I know that's not always the case. In addition, it's also, at least for me in upgrading, it's easy to forget things that you've configured even in your main Alfresco global.properties, those types of things that are specific to your environment that you need to reconfigure when you do upgrade.
So, excellent suggestions. Where do you think is the best place to get best practices around customization so they'll go through upgrades? I mean, of course, the most important best practice is use the public APIs. There's a conversation on IRC right now about a piece of code that didn't work because it's pulling from a non-public API. But Tony, what's your advice on what's your advice on where to find best practices around that?
I always start, I guess, with the pages on the SDK and how to create custom AMP files, and like you said, the public APIs, which beans are okay to use in your customizations and which ones should be hands off. That's usually, I think, a good place to start for somebody who's new to Alfresco. And like I said, I think it's really important to follow the structure of building your customizations into AMPs so that they're all in one place and portable rather than customizing directly into the WAR file itself.
I think that's key, is having discipline in how you do and keeping your customizations and configurations separate from core Alfresco makes upgrades a lot easier. I'm sure Steve and Philip have plenty of experience with that.
Yeah, although the instances of Alfresco that I mainly manage don't have many customizations, so we don't really get hit with that sort of issue.
For me, most of the customizations and the additional amps and things that I'm adding, I'm obviously sourcing internally as well. So they tend to be very bleeding edge, so they're not necessarily quite, they're not sourced, you know, and implemented in quite the same way as the customer, I have to admit. So my experience might not be entirely. I don't think of the right word. Yeah, standard.
Common.
Normal.
Yeah.
Though it is surprising how many, you know, how often people move beyond the normal surfaces that we test and support. And you know, it's nice to have an open source product because you can do that. But if you don't keep really good track of what you've done, then it's going to be really hard when you upgrade. Any thoughts you want to add on that topic, Angel?
Really, we try to use AMP packages. This is not all the people think the same, but we are trying just only to develop AMP, and all our properties are going to the global configuration, Alfresco global properties. So when you make an upgrade, then you can deploy all your functionalities again. You can adapt every of these modules is separate, so you don't need to test all together, and it's a more simpler way of developing. But sometimes this is not possible, and again, it's the more delicate part of the process to adapt all the existing customizations.
Excellent, thank you. So, you know, those are great tips on generally upgrading and how to do things throughout the life cycle of your product, your implementation. Now let's talk about 5.0 specifically. When upgrading to 5.0, what are the gotchas?
I would throw in there, and this is not, I guess, not 5.0 specific. Sorry for backtracking a little bit.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Check the supported stacks for the new version of Alfresco that you're upgrading to, because this has burned me more than once because I just get excited about doing the upgrade and having it done and don't really realize that the database that I'm on or the OS that I'm on is no longer supported or compatible with the new Alfresco version.
Absolutely, and specifically with 5.0, because it's a major version, it gave us the opportunity to upgrade a lot of libraries and stop support for a lot of old stacks. So I forgot it. I always Google search Alfresco supported platforms, but at alfresco.com you can get the list of supported stacks, and it's we changed a lot of stuff. I was just looking through. So we're on Java 7, JDK 7. U60. What are some of the other major upgrades to the platform you're going to need? The Tomcat 7 now?
Yeah, and basically support for Windows 2012 and drop support for 2008. It looks like release updates for all the supported Linux and Unix versions. So
take the opportunity to upgrade your OS and the various platforms underneath it at the same time you upgrade Alfresco.
Yeah, I think there were some I mean, we were actually running internally quite an old version of MySQL. I think the standard version that comes with the Red Hat, and I think we were advised by engineering that there are performance benefits gained by upgrading your database, even potentially. So yeah, really just good to check it all.
So on IRC, Douglas pointed out a little bit ago that his favorite. That one of the good things about the 5.0 release is just all the bug fixes. So that's really nice. Bindu points out that Oracle 12 is a major upgrade. Axel says that we haven't yet started supporting Java 8, and that's true. We are evaluating and working on it. So yes, support platforms, that's excellent. So what else is important for the 5.0 upgrade to make sure you check?
Check.
Sorry, I should say that from a developer point of view, I think I always I'm talking like a developer, but it's so. The properties are now inside inside the packages, the Java packages, the AR, and this can be an added difficult to new developers because they have to search for all these properties. We are trying to develop based on Alfresco source code, so there is no problem with this. We have the source code GitHub, so it's very accessible. But this could be another difficult for new developers.
Yes, that is an important point. So one of the things we talked about is how easy it is to make a configuration change that you don't keep track of for an upgrade. And previously, you would go into the Alfresco WAR and you could see the various configuration files sitting all around, even though you should make your changes in Alfresco global.properties. So in 5.0, part of the Maven changes is to package the configuration with the code all into a single jar. So the files are still there, but you have to open the jar to get them. And this is so if you're an admin, you go to the documentation and you can see those files, you can see the configuration with actual explanations and context, and you can make those changes in your global.properties. If you're a developer, then you get then you can see all the configuration properties that are available through by using your developer environment, using the SDK, and bringing in the source code. So it's a change in how we do things. I think it's an improvement, but if you're used to doing things the old way and grepping the WAR for configuration, that's not going to work. You got to go to the documentation, or you got to open up Eclipse and search there.
Okay. I mean, I was going to come in from a totally different angle if that subject's.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Obviously, Tony was quite correct earlier when he was saying about the need to sort of check all the amps and things that you've got are going to be compatible and things. But something else which is definitely key before you do an upgrade is to check that your hardware still meets the requirements, because there is a slightly, I mean, especially with Solr 4, you're going to potentially need a little bit more disk space, maybe a little bit more memory, and possibly some additional cores as well. We found that a minimum of 4 vCPUs or 4 cores is probably the minimum starting point, really, and then if you're going to have Solr 4 and Solr 1 during your upgrading things, then you're going to want to have appropriate disk space free for your Solr 4 indexes and things. My experience, the Solr 4 indexes are slightly larger than the Solr 1 indexes. But again, it depends on whether you have all the features enabled or not, if you're going to have the suggester enabled and things like that. But definitely you should consider hardware before you just go and upgrade.
Excellent, Philip. I think that's a great suggestion and leads to a couple related topics. So the hardware, the installer now checks that you have a CPU that's fast enough. So if you haven't upgraded in a while, you might get an installer notice about it not being fast enough, and it still lets you proceed. Or if it's a really old CPU, it might just tell you you gotta put on a different machine. So make sure you do that. There's conversation in IRC. Bindu's talking about the environment validation tool and how valuable it is to run that in advance of an upgrade to make sure that your environment meets all of our really basic checks. There's a conversation about whether that's been updated for 5.0. I thought it was, but I haven't verified that. Do any of you know if the environment validation tool has been upgraded for 5.0?
I don't.
Okay.
One thing I guess that you touched on, Richard, is that new now I noticed in the installer is it does the install, but then it'll warn you as it's completing if your environment doesn't quite meet the spec. So, for example, the first time I tried installing, it warned me that I had 3.99 gigs of RAM instead of the recommended 4 or above. So that's helpful.
Excellent. So yeah, so I know that Peter was the one who initially wrote the environment validation tool, and a lot of that has been moved into the installer. But my understanding is we plan on maintaining that project as well. So if it hasn't been updated, I'm sure it will soon. I don't know. Also related to, from the IRC chat is the supported stacks. Just to be clear, the list of supported stacks for 5.0 is not the complete list we normally support. As we've done previous releases, we get through, we don't want to hold up all of the release in order for the lesser used stacks to be QA'd completely. So the supported stacks list is all the currently QA'd stuff, and expect in 5.1 to have additional stacks added to that list. But you should also check for modules like records management. I don't think that one's quite ready for 5.0 yet. Check that all the modules you need. I think Google Docs and all those sort of things. Lost my train of thought. Philip brought up another interesting. I don't know. We'll get there. So, it was the indexing. So the other topic you brought up is the indexing. So, how does upgrading 5.0 work with the indexes? You have Solr 1, you have Lucene, you have Solr 4. What's the process?
Okay, I think it really depends on how whether you want Solr 1 to be available whilst you're creating your Solr 4 indexes. I mean, that's the documented and probably the recommended and most useful way to upgrade. So essentially, you install Solr 4 and it's running at the same time as Solr 1, and whilst Solr 4 is busy indexing and things, your search subsystem is set to Solr 1, and you get not all the search features, obviously, but you'll get limited search capabilities, and the system's still nice and useful. And then, depending on how many documents you have, that will take a little while to complete the indexing for Solr 4. And once you're happy that that's completed, and again, this is all in the documentation, then you can go into the admin console, and you can just switch your subsystem on the live system, and it will immediately then be using Solr 4, and you'll find all your lovely faceted search results and things like that all just start to appear in search results.
Excellent. So when
at that point you can, if you want to, you can at that point bin your Solr 1 indexes and things. Hopefully you'll never have a need to go back.
Well, that was my question. So you have to make sure to delete those indexes. They're not going to be deleted magically for you. No. The Solr 1 ones.
Yeah, you probably have to, depending on how you've got Solr running, whether it's in a separate container or not, you'd have to stop that application as well, and then you can clear out the indexes, and then job done.
As Philip mentioned, in the documentation in the chapter on upgrading to 5.0, there's a whole section on search, so that should answer all your questions. But if you, Axel made a funny comment in IRC about, if you haven't upgraded from Lucene yet, then you probably should have already done that. But say you are the person who's still on Lucene, do you upgrade? Do you go from Lucene to Solr 1 to Solr 4, or do you go from Lucene to Solr 4? Do you guys know that, or will we just have to check the docs?
I would have recommended the latter there, because it doesn't seem to be a big point in spending hours or days indexing a Solr 1, only to have to do it again for Solr 4.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very useful. Peter is looking into when the environment validation tool is going to be updated. He's not directly responsible for that at the moment, but he did do all the installer improvements, so that's great. So thanks, Peter. What else is important for upgrading specifically to 5.0?
You touched on this a little bit, Richard, but the fact that Alfresco Explorer is gone now. I know there still are some people, and we have clients that still have implementations built and are using Alfresco Explorer, so it's important to let it be known that that application has been deprecated for a while now, but now it is actually gone.
Yes, absolutely, and we cleaned out a lot of stuff. So Explorer is the big one. The AVM is a big one. Lucene, of course, is a big one. Those are the big ones that come to my mind. There's a whole list in the documentation and in the release notes. I wrote a blog post about it. So specifically for the 5.0b and 5.0c release notes in the wiki, have a full list. But if you're using any of those things, have a transition plan before you upgrade. Now, Explorer is an interesting case. We are going to open source that now that we're through getting the release done and we're through the holidays. I'm working with engineering to get somebody assigned to. I mean, it was open source before, but we're going to move it into its own project on GitHub where you guys can help maintain it if you still use it. So, Tony, if you have a customer who wants to play a big role in that, let me know so I can make sure they're added.
We're trying to push them to share.
Yeah, there are a lot of advantages to that.
Well, we did actually miss that earlier in our new features list. That I was thinking about it from an administrative point of view. One of the good things which is in the new share is the site manager feature. Finally, as an admin, you can just go in, click your site manager, and then you can start dealing with some user issues much easier than you could before. And I think that tool is going to get expanded on as well in time. So.
Absolutely, and in Enterprise Edition, because we removed Explorer, we had to create a new Enterprise, a new administration console, and so it's got a lot of tools that have been refined there.
And that is living as an interface within the core Alfresco war, correct? Not in share anymore.
Correct. Yep. So there are a couple tools like the node browser that's in both places. So. Talking about tools and things breaking during upgrades, there was a conversation in IRC earlier about the JavaScript console not working in 5.0. So some of these important developer tools our community is still working. That's one that is maintained through the helpfulness of various members of our community, and still working on getting some of those fixed. Just going through my list, we talked about the property files. Talked about making sure you have sufficient disk and memory and CPU for the reindex to Solr 4. I should mention that Solr 1 is included in order to have that uptime during the upgrade, but it's not it's not officially supported in 5.0. If you're an enterprise customer, you need support. Once you've completed the reindex to Solr 4, we expect you to remove Solr 1. Any other thoughts on that was my list of items specific for 5.0. Anything that we missed?
I don't have anything specific to 5.0, but I have a upgrade in general suggestion just from lessons learned. If at all possible, when you're doing an upgrade, try to practice doing your upgrade on a clone of your production environment and data. I've run into issues specifically with indexing where there's been bad data that's not indexable that has caused problems. And it wasn't noticed until we tried to upgrade production because our test environment didn't have that same data. So if at all possible, try to clone your prod data. And that'll also give you an idea of how long your reindex is going to take and how long the upgrade in general is going to take.
That sounds like hard-earned wisdom.
Unfortunately.
Excellent. Axel on IRC says that when he tested the JavaScript console this week, it was working in 5.0, so maybe that's already been done. So excellent. One of the items we mentioned in our previous discussion was our preparatory discussion was that an upgrade is a really good opportunity to also look at the support tools. We talked about the environment validation tools, but there's an Alfresco support tools amp that provides a lot of useful stuff for working with our support team if you're an Enterprise Edition customer. So there was a lightning talk on that a year and a half ago or so, but that's a good thing to check out and potentially put into your new environment. Okay, so question from the audience yesterday, I guess, was once you've done the upgrade, how do you validate it worked? What's your checklist for making sure that this is ready to be the production environment and there's no going back?
Okay, we have a general validation. It's a procedure. You go here and go there. And we have a more specific functional validation based on Selenium WebDriver. You have several samples on that GitHub, one from SAISI and another one. And with this, you can at least support all the main functionalities of your system in an automatically procedure. So you can be happy with the environment, and you can test again if you fail the first time. That is
excellent advice. And we had a Tech Talk Live 2 months ago with Michael Suzuki introducing you to WebDriver and Selenium, and there's examples in the SDK for doing that. There's also the great advice on there's a good summit presentation we posted on that topic. So yeah, that's excellent advice, anyhow.
I would say I would go back to my comment earlier about taking an inventory before you upgrade of what your environment-specific configs and any customizations, what those all are. Those are the things that are really important to test, because as a product being released, the out-of-the-box stuff, from my experience, always works. I run into problems if I don't thoroughly test my custom configs or actual code customizations to Alfresco.
Yeah, we've got a validation process, which is largely manual, but it has a number of sort of basic checks and things and tests. And so obviously during the upgrade, things we'll be monitoring all the logs, looking out for any errors or anything suspicious. Also, when it's just running to begin, for the first few hours of running, but we'll just run through a validation test, carrying out a number of sort of simple actions and things, and testing a number of the amps and things, just to verify that everything's working exactly as we'd expect to. So.
Have any of you posted your validation checklists in a blog or somewhere online where other people can look them over?
Yeah, I think we should be able to post some of ours. Most of ours are automated using Nagios or some other system. So that we've got a big DevOps dashboard that's full of green, sometimes some amber, and trouble's red. Yeah, that gives us sort of confidence that the system's up and responding and behaving. And then obviously there's the bit of a manual check just to log in, and in Alfresco 5 is to do a search and check that the Solr live search and faceted search is working fine. That's your big one.
Excellent. So expect Steve and Philip to both post their validation checks in a blog post at some point. I don't think, Philip, you've ever posted to the developer blog. I can get you access to that if you need it.
Okay.
So excellent. So next topic was when is it better to, so we've talked about upgrading, take your current data and put it into, do the backup restore process. Another approach that people talked about using on the IRC channel was to do an export transform load, a real migration of your data from the old system to an upgraded Alfresco. What are the pros and cons between the two? When would you prefer an ETL migration instead of just an upgrade?
I guess if you've got if you're running it on physical hardware and the machine's very, very old, then that might be a preferable option straight away.
I would say if you're looking to modify your content model at all, that's a migration is a good chance for you to clean that up and tidy up your content model, because there's really, if you're just upgrading, you might be moving garbage into garbage.
Excellent advice, especially if you want to remove items from your content model. You can't remove any other way without really doing export and import. I was also thinking that if it's also a good opportunity. Those are like technical levels of cleanup, but it's also a good opportunity to just do a business cleanup and look and say, do we need all this content? Is there stuff that should be removed, old, archived, whatever, and have your knowledge strategist help you with that process.
I've seen also it's a good opportunity if you have multiple Alfresco instances used for different purposes. It's a good opportunity to consolidate into one. So then in the future you're only upgrading one system instead of multiple.
I'm going to admit slight lack of knowledge around the upgrade path. Obviously, we're always running, well, for the systems I look after, are always generally running the latest release, so I'm always upgrading from the latest to the latest. So I don't know though whether if you were running Alfresco 3, whether you could jump all the way up to 5, or whether you'd have to make lots of intermediate steps. But clearly, I would have thought if you're going to have several upgrades, then the right path would have been to the preferable path might be to export and
from what I've seen, at least from version 3, you have to go to 4 before 5.
I think you might be right, actually, yeah.
Excellent advice. The Bindu says that if you need to change the database, then an ETL might be necessary. Axel says it feels like raising the white flag and admitting you did something horrible in the past, which I think is absolutely right, but having the humility to admit that and fix it is also really important. So Axel does say that there's the Alfresco patch module component add-on can be very useful for doing in-place cleanup. Bindu points out that the upgrade paths documented in the documentation explains the various upgrade paths that we've tested, starting with 2.2. So that's a real option. And as long as I'm here looking at the IRC chat, there was a conversation about whether if you're on Lucene, how do you get on Solr 5? And they point out that if you have a certain uptime requirements, you might need to continue with Lucene before and do the reindex to Solr 1 and Solr 4 in order to get all the way upgraded, in order to stay up. I think that's caught up on that chat. Axel says that it's not an add-on; it's building blocks and base classes you can use to write your cleanup scripts. So, excellent. So I appreciate all the input from the audience. Thanks. Any other thoughts on migration versus upgrade, or should we move on to the next topic?
I'll just add one more thing about the upgrade path. Another place that I've been burned is actually the upgrade path is upgrading from the latest service pack of your current version to the new version. So if you don't have the latest service pack installed, the actual supported path is to first upgrade to the latest service pack before going to the next version. And I have had instances where that has made a difference.
Absolutely. Hey, I should ask Angel, with Community Edition, have you had much success? We only do our test scripts on upgrading from the previous Community Edition release. So being able to go from 4.2 to 5.0.c isn't something that we look at very closely. Have you had much success with those sort of upgrades on Angel, or do you recommend going through each dot release?
Not really. We are patching every Alfresco release with a dedicated package. So I have an Alf issue 2034, and I can include this in the new version and test, or I can not to deploy this patch and see if it works. And on the validation process, we are checking all these patches, all these release for maintenance, and it's really simple if you have your work done. We have made migrations from 4 to B, 4 to C, and 4 to F to 5.0C. That's 3 versions in one step are good. It's just a one-step process.
Excellent. That's great to share. I appreciate that. And people do regularly post upgrade how-tos in the wiki, so that's a good place for community edition users to see what other people have done. And of course, I see blog posts posted on that topic as well. So you might find that somebody else has validated it. But like Angel said, you've got to, if you're using community, you accept a lot of that testing burden. You better spend some extra time making sure that it's all going to work the way you expect. So so let's move on to the next topic, specifically about customizations. What are important things to look for when upgrading from a customization from 4.2 or 4.x to 5.0? We already mentioned iCal, the new share framework. I know that changes a lot of customizations. Tony, you said you tested some of your stuff. How did that go?
Surprisingly, I have a collection of add-ons that I kind of maintain, and all of my stuff actually went pretty well. Most of it was recompiling with the new SDK and deploying amps, and all my stuff was pretty successful. My caveat is that my add-ons don't involve a lot of share customization, so I have the feeling that if I had specifically UI customizations, things written in UE, moving that to iCal probably would have been a little more painful, a little more work to re-customize. But like I said, most of my add-ons just involved a recompile and redeploy, which was much to my delight.
And I loved hearing that report too, because to be honest, I haven't heard many of those reports. Most people have had to do some coding to fix stuff between 4.2 and 5.0. iCal was a hot topic at Summit because it's going to be a gradual upgrade, a gradual migration from the old share framework to iCal. And so you need to check if the pages you've customized have changed or not. And there's really nothing else you can do. It's just the way it is. So make sure you check that if you've done share customizations, like Tony said. Axel points out that the majority of the Alfresco share is still in UE. There's only specific pages that moves to iCal at this point. So like the search page is probably the biggest at the moment, and the header bar. But with each release, you're going to find pages that move. So just got to be aware of that. I think the current one that engineering's targeting is the document library pages. One of the questions that was submitted was around the face table class for faceting in 5.0. That it breaks. So the specific question was that the add-on cannot be used in 4.2 or earlier due to model schema incompatibility. What are strategies for coping with this when writing an add-on that needs to work in both 4.0 and 5.0? And I asked engineering that question, and the response I got was that it's kind of standard between any upgrade. It is not possible to add residual aspects without a definition. And so we did a lot of cleanup. We removed a lot of stuff. If you have a dependency, that's going to break. And so your code's going to need to check what version of Alfresco you're on to be able to adapt, to distinguish between the two versions. So you just have to be really careful, especially with the 5.0 upgrade where we removed a lot of legacy components, a lot of legacy classes went with them. What are other key hotspots in a customization that you need to check? I know, Philip, you've deployed, our internal Alfresco has a few customizations installed. How did those go during the upgrade?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of amps and things applied. It wasn't too bad, actually. I mean, for the most part, things largely worked. As you picked out earlier, we were testing a few things before we did our upgrade to our production system. We found a few amps that weren't compatible, like records management, but I know that that's on the way now, a 5.0 compatible release. But it's really just to check anything that you might have in your global properties file still applies. There's sometimes the possibility of additional parameters. But yes, for us it was actually quite a smooth process. So Yeah, that's what I would check and see how you get on.
Excellent. Thanks for the advice. Any other thoughts on upgrading customizations?
Axel is pointing that Solr is still using GUI, so all modules developed with GUI components maybe working now. So iCow is the new way, but the old way is still working at Alfresco 5. So not all the modules have to be adapted to the new framework.
Excellent. Thanks for that clarification. So last topic. When things go poorly, what do you do?
Panic. No. Obviously, as you said earlier, I'm rolling out pre-release versions and things to our systems here, and so I've seen some interesting things happening from time to time. This is where, as I was saying earlier, it's really important to have a solid backup and things. Make sure you're testing on your test servers before you get around to rolling it out into production. Run it there for a few days. Make sure you test all the core functionality and things. But if something does go wrong, then hopefully you'll have, if you've still kept your WAR files and things from your previous version, then hopefully you'll be able to redeploy those. And if you restore a database backup and things, then with any luck, you should be able to at least get going as you were before, and as long as you kept all the logs and things from your upgrade attempt, and if you can as well, copy the database maybe, then you can start to look at those and hopefully identify where the problems are and things, and either send that through to support here or get in touch with the community.
Yeah, partners like Tony, you know, the group in IRC, forums, all happy to help out. And of course, Alfresco support would love to help out. Angel, what's your advice on where to go when things go poorly, or how to recover?
Just to be organized, to have all your work done in order to reproduce every step. You need to go ahead or back. You need to switch back in an easy way. The aim is the user can use the system every time. So you need to have your system control.
Yeah, and when asking for help, make sure you add enough detail that people can actually help you. Yeah. I did have a quick question. So when I originally invited you to the panel, I think it was Philip, maybe it was Steve, you gave me some statistics on how long it took to do the upgrade. What are some of your experiences on how long the upgrade and the reindex process took, and specifics around that?
That may have been me, and you've really put me on the spot here.
Hey, if you don't have it, that's all right. But
no, okay. I've just trying to find some.
I could quickly talk about my environments that I manage, if you like.
I've found some. Sorry, I have found some stats. So for example, on our main production, the full indexing was estimated at around about 13 hours, I think, but the transaction indexing was completed in approximately 1.5 hours. I've actually also got some stats here on the disk space requirements. So our Solr 1 index was approximately 9.5 gigabytes in size. With Solr 4, including the content indexing and things, that went up to about 16 gigabytes in total. So it's actually quite a bit bigger on our production system. So that's just something to be aware of. But I'll see if I can dig out the exact times while someone else talks.
And that's 16 gigabytes on how big of a content repo?
Again, I'll have to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's all right. I will be able to tell you in just a moment.
Steve, you said you had some details.
Yeah. So the cloud services have yet to go to Solr 4. So the work to do all that's still in progress. But we have some guidelines around how long upgrades can take. And if they take longer than an hour, then we send it back to engineering and tell them to fix it. So yeah, for our cloud services, if we have downtime, it's more of an hour to do an upgrade. In terms of the Solr indexing, our initial statistics show that the indexes are probably about twice the size. Our current index is 140 gigs, I think. So we're looking to get that quite a bit bigger. A re-index is probably going to take around a week for Solr 4. It depends how many cores we throw at it. What we might do is just get a really big box. And then you export that index and put that onto the smaller boxes that will run for production.
Excellent, thank you. Axel points out that the index isn't all that the growth in the index size. Solr 4 includes some cache data so that reindexing is quicker in the future when the content changes. So.
And it contains stuff for highlighting, search highlighting in the future when that comes on board in the product.
Very useful.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff which those bigger indexes are going to be used for, so they are valid. But you can tune them. So until you need that stuff, you can tune it out and then add it back in at a later date.
I have got more stats here now, and the transaction indexing for Solr 4 was at, say, about 1.5 hours. Content indexing was just over 5 hours. And the disk space stats that I gave you earlier were correct. I can tell you that we have approximately 620 gigabytes in our content store, and that at the time that the indexing was taken, we had over 310,000 nodes in the index and almost 350,000 transactions in the index. That's of any interest.
That's very interesting. So 16 gigabyte index on a 650 gigabyte repository. I'm glad to know that my MP3 collection isn't the majority of that.
Actually, you've actually raised an interesting point. We did actually, one of the issues that we did actually find in testing before we went live was that there was somebody had uploaded something like a 2 gigabyte text file, which happened to be a very, very, very bloated log. And yes, thankfully Solr is now configured by default to not index text files that are, stupidly big, because you can end up with an index file, and it can just take forever to index a file like that. So yeah, we got some nice fine tuning made as a result of all the Solr testing that we did on our internal system.
Excellent. Well, I learned a lot from this conversation. I appreciate all your participation. I also appreciate the participation from the audience. It's nice that we have so many experts on in chat that contribute. Axel says for more detail on Solr indexes, the summit session on that topic was really good. So we have hit the hour. So again, I want to thank all of you for participating. Any final thoughts or comments on upgrades that you want to share?
Analytics is we haven't talked about analytics, and it's a big thing which is coming this year.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We'll put that down on the list for future sessions to go into more details. So Excellent. Well, thank you for joining. Again, future sessions, check out the community calendar at alfresco.com/community. A week from Friday will be office hours with the engineering team, and I'm still collecting questions that need to be addressed in that as part of that, so please submit those. You can submit them on the Google Plus page or email community@alfresco.com or email me directly or put in IRC when I'm around, however you like, but we are doing that. So thank you very much. I know that a lot of our panelists hang out in the forums, so feel free to catch them there, or you can contact me if you have any additional questions. So thank you.